Hello everyone. Today we're going to be doing Module 5, Lesson 32. Our objective today is I can subtract a fraction from a mixed number. 2 days ago we added fractions to mixed numbers. Yesterday we added mixed numbers. Today we're going to subtract a fraction from a mixed number. In this lesson, we'll have 2 practice problems. First, changing mixed numbers to fractions, so continue to work on the practice we've been doing. And then a review of adding mixed numbers, which we learned yesterday. And then we'll learn 3 ways to solve mixed number subtraction problems. First, it'll be counting back. The second will be decomposing the subtrahend. That's a new word today that we'll talk about later. And taking out the 1. For our first practice problem, we're going to change mixed numbers to fractions. Then we'll add mixed numbers. Okay, let's start with some changing mixed numbers to fractions. So now we're doing the reverse of what we were doing when we were making fractions into mixed numbers. So first we need to pull out the whole number on this side. Remember, this is kind of where we split it. We split the ones from the fractions. So in this case, because my denominator is 5, I need to make the numerator and the denominator match. So I need 5 over 5. And over here, I just put my 4 over 5. Now when I add them together, I get my improper fraction. Same with this one. I'll pause here in case you want to do the other 2 on your own before me. Okay, let's bring it back. First, I pull the whole number because it's 4. If I have 2, that means I have 4 fourths plus 4 fourths, or 8 fourths. And I pull the 1/4 that's left over. I add those 2 together to get my fraction. For 3, if my denominator is 6, that means I have 6 sixths times 3, or 18 sixths plus the extra 5 sixths. We're just kind of splitting it and taking this times the denominator to get my numerator. So 18 plus 5 is 23 sixths. Okay, now let's review adding mixed numbers. So we're going to start with, if I have 5 and 1/3 plus 2 and 1/3, I'm going to rewrite. Then I'm going to separate and group the ones together and the fractions together. Five plus 2, I do the ones first always, so I get 7, and I add the fractions together, I get 2/3. For this one, I rewrite 4 and 3/5 plus 2 and 1/5. I group the ones, 4 plus 2, and I group the fractions, 3/5 plus 1/5. I do the ones first always. 4 plus 2 is 6. 3/5 plus 1/5 is 4/5. And that's our adding mixed numbers. Now that we've done our practice and gotten warmed up for today, we're going to learn about 3 ways to solve subtraction problems. But before we do that, let's talk about some vocab that's really important for subtraction. And these words that we're going to learn all are related to subtraction. So they relate to subtraction even if it's fraction subtraction. So the first word is minuend. And the minuend is just the word number that you start with, the big number usually in 4th grade. The subtrahend is the number you're taking away. And that's the word that kind of is really important for today. The number that we're taking away is the subtrahend. The difference is the part that's left over. It's our answer. So now going back, let's learn about our 3 ways to solve. The first one is counting back. When we count back, it's good for when the subtrahend is smaller than the minuend. So in our fraction problem, this is where if we have 4/5 and we're taking away 2/5, a number that's smaller than 4/5. And we're going to use a number line to show the process. Let's do some practice problems now. Okay, to start off today with our problem 1, let's just review our understanding of units, right? If I have 3 oranges and 2 apples, and I take away 1 apple, I still have 3 oranges, but now I have 1 apple. 2 minus 1 is 1. If I have 3 dogs and 2 puppies minus 1 puppy, That's the same still as 3 dogs because I didn't change the dogs, but now I have 1 puppy. If I have 3 ones and 2/5 and I take away 1/5, I still have 3 ones, but now I only have 1/5. And that kind of helps us understand what we're going to be doing today with subtraction. So now let's look at method 1, that counting back method. So if I have 3 4/5 minus 3/5, I'm going to pull the 3, I'm going to pull the 4/5, and from the 4/5, I'm going to subtract that 3/5. So on this side, I have 3 my ones, so I'm grouping my ones and my fractions. I have my ones, this doesn't change, but the 4/5 minus 3/5, I get 1/5. I have to take away 3/5 from 4/5. On a number line, what this looks like, I have 3 and I have 4. And in the middle, I have fifths. I start at 3 4/5, and I'm taking away 3/5. So I'm going to go back 1, 2, 3. We draw our arrow to show our operation, our subtraction, and I write a little note telling people what I did. I have 3 1/5. Now, the question that made me know that this is the counting back method is this question: are there enough fifths in my first number to subtract 3/5? Are there enough fifths in my minuend to take away the subtrahend? And if the answer is yes, then the easiest way to do this is just the counting back method, like this, the actual if yes, counting back. Here's another example. Notice I'm starting by rewriting the problem. I'm going to pull out the 1. Because I know that 9/10 is bigger than 3/10, I'm going to do counting back. I pull out the 9/10. If I take away 3/10, so now it's just a problem between these two. So I have 4 still, but 9/10 minus 3/10 is 6/10. And I can show that with a number line. Because my answer is greater than 4, my smaller number is 4. These are 4, but it's not bigger than 5, so 5 is the other number. And I have tenths in between. I start at 4 9/10. I take away 3, 1, 2, 3. Draw my arrow to show that operation. I take away my subtrahend, and I get my difference. Our next way to solve a mixed number subtraction problem is by decomposing the subtrahend. What's the subtrahend? It's the number we're taking away. Good. When we decompose the subtrahend, it's good for when the subtrahend is a bigger fraction than the fraction in the minuend. And we'll see what that looks like here in a second. I think you'll see it right away. And we're going to do that by breaking the problem into 2 parts. Now let's talk about what happens if your subtrahend is greater than the fraction in your minuend. So in this case, the question I'm going to ask myself still is, are there enough fifths in my minuend to take away the subtrahend? 3/5 is greater than 1/5, so that's a no. And that means I have 2 choices. For this one, we're going to decompose the subtrahend. And the way that this looks, I'm going to start by rewriting my problem again, like normal. And I'm going to decompose my subtrahend this time. Before, I was decomposing my minuend. So in here, I'm going to take off the piece I would need to get to a whole number. So 1/5. If I take away 1/5, I get to 4. And then I have 2/5 left over. If I take 4 1/5 minus 1/5, I get 4. And if I go back 2 more from that, I get 3 3/5. And I think this is easier to see using a number line in the arrow method. So here's my number line. My answer is between is greater than 3, but my starting number is bigger than 4, so 4 will be my middle number. 3 will go down here, 5 up here. I have fifths, so I need to make sure I draw in my fifths. So 4 1/5 is where I start. And I'm making 2 jumps here. First, to take away the number that would get me to a whole number, so minus 1/5. And then taking away the other 2/5 of 3/5. So I have 3 3/5. That's my answer. Remember, I'm only getting these numbers from this. I can't just pull out random numbers. I'm breaking this number up to subtract it. To show the arrow method, I have 4 1/5 as my start. I take away 1/5. I'm just matching these arrows up here, but in a more streamlined, more efficient way. 4 minus 2/5, I get 3 3/5. This is kind of like 3 5/5 minus 2/5. That's how I get 3 3/5. Here's another example. Start by rewriting. I ask myself that question, are there enough fifths in my minuend to take away my subtrahend? And there are not, so I'm going to decompose. I'm going to decompose my minuend, or my subtrahend, into the number that'll give me a whole number. So I'm going to match this one and whatever's left over to make that top number 4. So 3 plus 1 is 4. If I take away 3 3/5 and I get 3, I get 3. Take away 1/5, I get 2 4/5. Again, this might be easier to see at first on a number line. I have 2, 3, and 4. Marking with fifths again. So 3 3/5 is where I start. Take away 3/5 first. I'm doing 1, 2, 3 to get me to that whole number. And taking away 1/5 to get me to my answer, my difference. The arrow method would look like starting with my whole number, taking away the part that matches this to get me to my whole number, and then taking away the part that's left over to get me my difference, my answer. If you want to see this one, it'll be in the notes posted on Google Classroom. Our last way of solving a mixed number subtraction problem is to take out a 1. When we take out the 1, it looks a lot like decomposing the subtrahend, and it's good for when the subtrahend is a bigger fraction than the fraction in the minuend. And we're going to break the problem into 2 parts, or break the fraction into 2 parts. And let's get some practice on that now. Okay, now let's talk about our last method for solving a mixed number subtraction problem. So if there aren't enough fifths, we can also pull out fifths from the mixed number. So before we were pulling out fractions from the subtrahend, now we're going to pull out numbers from the minuend, the mixed number. How this looks is I start by rewriting the problem. But this time, instead of making a number bond out of my fraction, I'm going to make it out of the mixed number. I'm going to pull out 1 here. 1 whole is going to get split over to here, and the fifths and the other whole number are going to be there. And now I'm taking 3/5 away from 1 to help me find my answer. And this is going to be a bit of an addition problem. So how this works is if I have 2 1/5, I know I can start with that. This number is going to stay. But now I'm just doing a subtraction problem here. 1 or 5/5 minus 3/5 is 2/5. And I'm going to add the 2/5 because really what's happening here is I'm doing a problem. I'm doing 1 minus 3/5. And I can't take away this part because that would mean I'm actually taking more than what it's asking me to take away. This is the difference that I need to add on and put together to make my answer. So 2 1/5 plus 2/5 is 2 3/5. You can show that with the arrow method. And it looks a little bit different this time. So I have 1 minus 3/5. I get 2/5. I'm going to add 2 1/5 to it, and I get 2 3/5. Let's look at this next example. I'm going to start by rewriting the number, 12 1/4, and the other number. I'm breaking apart this one. I'm taking out just one, so I'll have 11 1/4 here, and that 1 that I pulled out over here. And this will be like 11 1/4 because that stays the same. And now I just have to do this little fraction problem. 1 minus 3/4 equals 1/4. So I need to add 1/4 up here, and I get 11 2/4. Remember, I'm starting with 1 in my arrow method. I'm taking away the fraction up here. I get 1/4. I'm going to add it to what I already had, what I kept. And I get 11 2/4. To see the third problem, it'll be online in the notes. And that wraps up an example of how to do all the problems in Module 5, Lesson 32.